This week we did see the release of the Star Wars trailer. Rob, Jack, are you big Star Wars fans? Are you looking forward to the new film coming out?
No, I'm not a Star Wars fan.
Oh
I'm
my
looking
god.
forward to the film coming out because I really like J.J. Abrams, but I've just never really got on with Star Wars. As a kid, I liked it because I was a kid, but like now, it's just not for me. It's too fantasy in space. I prefer more hard sci-fi stuff.
And Rob.
I'm with Jack, so yeah, I couldn't care much
God.
less. I'm
I
glad
get a
it's
lot of
coming
hate
out. It's
for
going
it.
to make a lot of people happy, but yeah, I might watch it when it comes out to download. But
I can't believe you have to talk about a Star Wars game with people that don't like Star Wars. I feel this is going to put a negative spin on everything. But, we'll press on. So a few weeks ago, we did discuss about the controversial, really high requirements AR put out for Star Wars Battlefront, which included a graphics card that's higher than the one inside the PlayStation 4, and 16 gig of RAM as well for the recommended settings. So keeping up the controversy, the payment structure for EA's game has come under pretty heavy criticism, mainly due to the pricing plan and sort of apparent lack of content from the original launch. The game has received a hell of a lot of criticism over the last week, and so much so that one of the level designers has actually come out in defense of the games and sort of come up with some things back. So I think the first thing to do is sort of look at what the payment plans are really for. And they're doing 3 different tiers of paying. So the first one is sort of the basic standard edition. So with that, you just get the standard edition of the game. With the deluxe edition, for £4 more, you get a couple of emoticons, so people like dancing and stuff when you win a game, and you also get some instant access to stuff that you usually have to play to unlock. And alongside that as well, there's also the Ultimate Edition. So the Ultimate Edition also has the Season Pass. So the main issue around it has been that EA have tried to bring out this game, and they basically said now that all the content they sort of promised isn't necessarily going to be ready for launch. So they're going to release the game, and in order to get access to this new content, you now also have to get the Season Pass. So as the content comes out, you'll be able to play it and use it. So I think the first point in this, so with Jack, so you've played a bit of Star Wars Battlefront now. What do you think of sort of the new pricing scheme? What are EA trying to do? And is it right that they're putting in all this sort of tiered and expensive content?
Well, is it right? No, it hasn't been right since Battlefield 3, honestly. But at the same time, it's really hard to judge how unfair it is because the Season Pass hasn't come out. We have no idea what that content's going to be. They could, for all we know, be developing these epic space battles that they want to take longer on, or making, more interesting maps or whatever, making new heroes, which I know people are excited by seeing their favourite characters as playable heroes. However, having said that, I paid for premium on 3 and 4, and on 3 it felt very expensive. I was always clear, but it was a trend that had become really entrenched since Call of Duty really took off after 4, when they started charging for their map packs. And in 3, I felt while it was very expensive, I was okay spending that money for the Season Pass because I felt the content I got was detailed and rich enough that it was worth £10 or so per, or $10 per 4 or 5 maps, because you would gain a whole aesthetic feel to a pack. So the first one was Strike at Karkand, which brought back famous Battlefield 2 maps, which obviously, a lot of people say, oh, it's quite lazy, which it is, but it was also, those 2 maps are extremely famous, and it was really cool to play them in the new engine. And it brought in all this new destructibility and weapons, which really made the game feel like it had expanded, like an expansion packs, like they used to be. But then for 4, I felt the opposite. I felt that the maps were just lazy, just coming out, and they had these themes that were just very gimmicky and didn't feel very interesting. And I'm worried for Battlefront because when I played the game, I did not feel it was very different from the Battlefield games. It felt the same, it moved the same, it sounded the same, apart from the Star Wars sounds.
I love it how you're comparing it to Battlefield 3 and 4 as opposed to Star Wars Battlefront, which is like...
That's what it is, though. I mean, it's so far removed from the Battlefront 2 experience. Yes, you run around and you get power-ups and you can control vehicles and stuff, but it's got the Battlefield, shooting. It's got the Battlefield speed. It's got the Battlefield graphics. You know, even like the hit markers and stuff just feel very Battlefield. Like the points and the XP you get is Battlefield. So
Yeah. And I think so. Rob, do you have any thoughts sort of on the pricing? I guess mainly.
Yeah, I personally think it's getting out of hand. It's a bit the sort of thing they're doing at the moment is as I've just to sort of reiterate that I've not followed it because I've got zero interest in this game, but I have seen a lot of things being mentioned in the media, and I do look at a lot of different gaming websites, so I have kind of caught what seems to be going on. And it sounds as though they've maybe demoed things at certain game shows which were unpolished, and then they've removed them.
Yeah.
It sounds as though they've sort of promised or mentioned that some things will be in the game, and then run out of time. So what they're doing now is that they're stripping all of that back. They're charging you full price for less than what they had mentioned was going to be in the game, and then they're charging you the price of half a game every time they re-include something that they said they were going to do anyway. Which it's bad practice. I mean, I know you said the artist struck back and was saying that we have to pay wages, we have to develop this, and we're adding content in this. But the people used to do that. But what they did is rather than promising a date too early for too much content, they would promise a realistic release date and get all of the content in for the release, and then maybe actually give you extra DLC on top of that, rather than giving you sections of the game because they didn't plan their time properly.
Yeah. I think just to touch on a few things there, and just to say to the chat as well, we can see what you're saying. There is a bit of a delay between what you say and us being able to respond to it. So yeah, we will comment and talk back to you guys, but yeah, there is a bit of delay. So if we do like we're ignoring you, we're not. We're just a bit further back in time. And yeah, so going back to this, the comments as well. So what the level designer said was that nothing has been cut off and saved, which I agree with. I don't think they're cutting stuff off because they're holding it back. I just think they haven't made it yet. They said they're working hard to get in there as much as possible as they can, which I think again is fair to say. But again, if they're not delivering what they actually sort of initially said they would deliver, then that sort of, to charge the same and then to charge for the extra content as it comes out, I don't think that's really good enough.
It feels as though people buying it are paying for their mistake. It's like funding them to keep being slack and making promises and not delivering. That's what it feels as though people are paying for now.
So they've also said it should have been released to the main game, but that would mean they have to delay the game by a ton. But again, that's almost admitting the fact that they haven't put everything in the game that they intended to have it put in there in the first place, and again, doesn't justify the price increase. And his final tweet, which is probably the most interesting one, is like a movie ticket costs about $20 and gives you about 2 hours of fun, and no one's complaining about that, which is quite an interesting point. But I'm not sure whether it stacks up. What are your sort of thoughts, Jack, on sort of this retaliation?
I mean, it's hard to judge, isn't it? Because they're not going to come out on Twitter and say, you know what, mate, good point, fuck our company, it's rubbish. But I just feel bad for EA. I know this is going to sound awful because, fuck EA, they're terrible. But I do feel bad for the people who work there, because imagine you've been given Star Wars license. You've been told to remake Battlefront. So gamers are expecting a good Battlefront experience. But because you're EA and DICE, they're also expecting a AAA experience. So they, are clearly rushing this game out to make money on it. And in there, I truly believe is a good game. I truly believe that if with a lot more time and more content and a proper update to the engine, it'd be good. But at the end of the day, it's just not right, like, to charge that much money for whatever they're going to give. I spent about the same amount of money on Fallout New Vegas when that launched, Collector's Edition. In fact, probably much less, so about 70, 80 quid. So yeah, around the same as the Ultimate Edition for Battlefront. And I got a physical copy, I got a hardback, really nicely printed comic, which had prequel story, had like these really nice in-game poker chips, a vault coin, playing cards, a making of documentary, and then the game itself and some in-game stuff like a silent sniper rifle, blah blah blah. And that, I felt like that was good value for money. I had physical stuff, I had cool stuff, I got stuff in game, and I had a nice little collector's edition. This Ultimate Edition just feels like we're going to charge you the same price as the game itself again to not rip you off later individually for the map packs.
So just to put into perspective there as well, I mean, what we're not getting. So if we compare, so I got a nice little list here of like stuff that's in Battlefield. Sorry, in Battlefield, surprisingly, in Battlefront and 3, and which wasn't in the previous game. So in the previous game, they had 30. So the previous game cost was actually $50 when it came out, and this was years ago. Now it's 2005. The first game came out. So they had 33 total maps, and that was 16 planets, and they had 4 DLC maps. So for Battlefront, we get 8 maps, and with 4 planets. So the original one, there was 32 versus 32. In this one coming out, there's only 20 versus 20. We know on launch there's going to be no space battles. It's not moddable. There's no single-player campaign, which there was in the original. So in the original game, for the infantry types, which maybe as games have moved on, people do want this type of stuff simplified. There was 51 playable infantry types with 6 standard classes per faction, 8 faction classes and 19 playable hero units. From what we know, there's been only loadouts, so you can only really pick from really a select few, as opposed to customizing what your character can do. And we aren't really sure of the number of heroes yet. There were 37 controllable vehicles in the original game and 15 controllable turrets. So far, I'm not sure whether we're getting near that. Again, if you're a big Star Wars fan, the classical, in the original Battlefront game, you could play the classical and the prequel eras. In the new Battlefront game, we're only going to be able to experience the classic, I think. So it's it's a bit different, I think. It's definitely not like what we expected, and I'm not sure whether we can see. I'm not sure what we should expect really from this game. Have they done it right? It's definitely not a Battlefront game, and I can see why people are sort of annoyed by it a bit.
But you say we weren't expecting this, but I mean, really, I think if you've been following the games industry, we kind of were expecting this. Battlefield 3 came out a mess. Like, that game was unplayable when that came out. And when it got sorted, yeah, it was a good game. Then Battlefield 4 came out, and it was just Battlefield 3.1, essentially. And that was a mess again. And then there was loads of controversy with the premium, and that especially after the controversy in premium before. So I think people... And then Hardline, again, just... It felt like Payday, but by Battlefield. And I think people really were expecting Battlefront outside of really, rabid Star Wars fans. Because I've got friends who don't play Battlefield, love Star Wars. They get in this game. They love it. They're so hyped because, they hear the blaster sounds and the AT-ATs walking past shooting and, they're fangirl until they die. But for me, it's just not a good enough game, and I wasn't expecting it to be, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've got a bit to see, sort of how it will go, whether it comes out as a mess or not. DICE's reputation is a bit mixed, but then again, like EA have, people are still going to buy it. If someone pays this much for all the different content, then can we really complain? I think for me the thing is, like with consumers and specialists, it's if consumers were sort of had all the details and knew everything about the game that, say, someone who looked into it most knew before it came out, would they make the same buying decision? I think if you maybe did look at all the stuff before it, and you wanted to buy it as a sequel, then maybe people wouldn't buy it. But then again, it's a different game, and if people want to play it and people are happy to pay that, then nothing's going to change, nothing's going to happen.
They were never going to take a risk, were they? Really, it's just too much money involved in the project. No matter how much artistic integrity you have, it's a real big gamble to take a license like that and build a new engine while trying to keep Battlefront series fans happy, Star Wars fans happy, general gaming fans happy, and DICE fans happy. It was never going to happen.
Who should they have focused on? I think Star Wars fans. I think making a good single-player campaign would be brilliant. That's what people want.
The Battlefront single-player campaign itself wasn't exactly an incredible cinematic experience. It was just, you're in the maps and you have to do these objectives. It wasn't. I mean, I guess it wouldn't have been hard to put in this one, but I don't. Was it a big part of the game? Was it not just the battles themselves?
It was like the story. So you played as a clone trooper. You fought through all the Clone Wars. And you got this different perspective from someone who had to actually go through all the side story. It was like one of those plots. It was what the Force Awakens, not the Force Awakens, Force Unleashed did. So what they did is they made the games right in between all the key films, and then if you play through the first to the end, then you got to see like all this really interesting detail and plot stuff that happened between the games, and it was like brilliant because I think that's what Star Wars fans like as well. You know, they had the first 3 films, and then the second 3 films slowly all tied it in. So it's nice to see all these little gaps in the Star Wars universe getting filled up, and that's what as well made it good. It was the story. You know, it was being able to see the story from a different perspective, and it was a fun multiplayer game. You know, with this, there's none of that, and it takes away a bit of the magic a bit. So yeah, I guess we'll see when it comes out how many people do buy it. I don't think I'm going to buy it really. Are you? Are either of you?
Not a launch, but I have to say it did look and sound really good. So if they can add a lot of content to the game to the point where I think it's worth a full game price, I probably will get it because you know, you don't really get these AAA cinematic, really good-looking experiences anymore. I think it's quite rare for that. I don't know. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm not getting it launched, but I'm not saying no yet, if that makes sense.
Multiplayer by itself isn't enough to sell a game to me. It's even if it wasn't Star Wars, or even if it's a franchise, not saying it's not Star Wars, if it was a franchise I actually really enjoy, I still probably wouldn't go for a multiplayer-only game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think for me, yeah, without a single player campaign is hard. And to be honest, like the price per game for what you get in it is just like ridiculous. There's like, yeah, you're basically paying for something that's really nicely polished. Maybe one day it will be better. They should release a single player campaign. If they release it on the
DLC.
On the DLC, yeah, and with their season pass, that'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
I don't think they will.
I don't think they can win from where they are now.
No.
PR-wise.